But then I saw this. And then I realized I had put on my big boy pants and done some amazing investigative journalism. Folks, another amazing episode of Big Boy Pants Golf. It's me, your host, Big Boy Pants Golf, with my co-host in this episode, Jake Span Golf.
What is happening, folks? How are we doing today?
Today is July 12th, and we got some breaking news for you. As of this AM, LIV Golf announces Simplebet as official sports betting innovation partner. Folks, I tried to have a YouTube gambling expert on maybe 10 days or so ago. Guy wouldn't get on the channel, and then I missed the story a little bit, but we're in on this scoop right now. It all makes sense. I made a video about this a year ago. Here's some evidence. If this was a magic show, you'd know that the UAE was using misdirection. It's controlling the media, it's got chatbots and AI, and it's encouraging everyone to start gambling. So don't be surprised in the future when your phone keeps telling you to double down. Jake Span, what do you think about this exciting news that you can now almost live bet in real time? Golf is the perfect sport for this because you and I both know that when there's a couple skins on the line, suddenly you focus a lot more. These psychologists, they know us human animals too well. They know we will have our addictions. They know what gets us excited and what gets us unexcited. So far, up to now, golf has not been that exciting for people. But once you throw in that live action betting, fast moving odds, it's game time. Jake Span, what are your thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. There's a reason why the Kentucky Derby, high stakes horse racing is such a big sport. It's because there's fear, there's thrill, there's loss, there's actual risk involved in it. For instance, my friend Digsies, who runs the show 54 Live with me, he bets on players all the time for tournaments. I don't personally gamble, but at the same time, he does, and it makes him, who I would say is more closer toward the casual side of golf fan. He is still that much more engaged whenever he's actually betting, because all of a sudden it goes from being a sideline venture to being something that he's personally invested in. You have something that's on the line with this one player. Nobody's a more dedicated fan than a gambler, because you are looking at everything. You are asking questions. You are sniffing the caddy's shoes. You are trying to get the inside scoop because you got to know. And when you know more, you win, or at least have a better odds to win. So seeing this happen, it's just going to make fans better at being a golf fan.
Think about what this does with the ability to actively and actually measure viewing metrics, because if a person starts off the round, you can actually track how much they're viewing as they make their bets throughout the round.
That's a good point too. You can see just how engaged somebody is. Like if all of a sudden, like if you're PGAtour.com or if you're LiveGolf.com, when you have these kind of bets going on, you're able to track traffic of individual player pages and go, hold up, wait a second. All of a sudden, if you're a PGA Tour person, Austin Eckert is getting a lot more, views. Or if you're a LIV person, why are all of a sudden are people looking so deeply at, Laurie Cantor this week? We start asking questions and learning who people are really going towards and gravitating towards.
You know what? We can also get the kids involved and the ladies involved, because it doesn't have to be about money. You can rig this system or set it up so that, just like a video game, you're collecting gold coins, which maybe you can turn into a discount for Nike shoes.
Okay, well, then you're turning it kind of like a CSGO lottery type skin situation from like 15 years ago, which I understand that makes sense. A lot of these games a lot of games or video games have an in-game type of currency. Is that what you're talking about? Something that's monetary, but not actually monetary, to where you can get these people involved in it without actually being 100% involved with it to where it's illegal? Is that what you're talking about?
You nailed it on the head. You want to get the hardcore gamblers involved, but even if you aren't a hardcore gambler, it's fun for all. You can still make it engaging through these other type of tokens or what have you. And then if you can redeem them for something at the end, maybe discount on LIV Golf tickets in the future or golf merch, everybody wins in this ultra consumerist society.
That makes sense, because it's kind of like PokerStars.net or all those poker websites, Full Tilt Poker, all of those ones where, I remember 15 years ago when poker first got on the scene. We had bicycle poker on our computers without internet, but then all of a sudden everyone wanted to play online poker. But obviously, online gambling is a hard thing to get around, especially for certain states like mine, Oklahoma, where it's just like ain't happening. So when you have the ability to do something or be involved in that consumerism network without actually, putting people out of their homes or putting people at risk, that's a good place to be because you're getting them still involved. And one of the positive things also is that Live Golf itself, and I tried to get it started on my own, but I don't have the engineering or the background. I just wanted to do it on the sideline as a friendship situation. But Live Golf itself launched its actual through Live Golf Plus this past event, their fantasy sports, and that's another big ticket win. So they've launched in the past week fantasy sports and got an official online gambling partner. These are two huge wins for Live Golf.
These things should have been done a long time ago. The PGA Tour system almost had this in place, actually, with Dr. Mark Brody's strokes gained percentages. I don't know how this simple bet app will take into account all the nuances when, for example, let's say Cam Smith has a 6-footer. You're not going to have it where all 6-footers are the same. I want to know, is this a slippery left to right 6-footer? Because if so, if the odds are good, I'm getting in if you just give me 50-50 odds. I need to know all the details, but there's so much on the plate right now to get people engaged. And this, to me, has always been the big money maker. And that's why, if you think about it, the UAE was getting involved in gambling by allowing it in certain areas. On January 25th of 2022, the UAE announces legalized gambling. The UAE is truly putting forth some great effort to emerge from the shadows of Saudi Arabia. So now that the UAE recognized that sports gambling was the way to go last year, you knew that KSA was going to figure out, hey, we need to get some of this sports gambling moolah because this is the big money item. This is what keeps my whole little local area going. Vegas, gambling, addictions.
Not only that, it makes fans better fans. One of the things people talk about is that, like, when you look at the history of baseball, and I hate baseball. I don't like watching baseball at all. But I love the stats of baseball because everything is a statistic. Everything is tabulated. When you started introducing fantasy baseball back in the 80s and 90s, it made the fans who were actually paying attention to baseball better fans because they're actually looking at things like whip, which was, by the way, a brand new invented stat for fantasy sports. And now it's super important in calculating, is a pitcher actually good? These things matter because they help educate the fans and they give us new metrics to really look into what is a player doing in these intangible situations. All of a sudden, we're no longer asking questions. Is Rory McIlroy good from wedge shots? We know because these things are going to get tracked better. Fantasy sports does that. Gambling does that because yes, it does lead to potential addicting behavior, but it forces everybody to pay attention more to the minute minutia of the day in, day out grind of the sport, and it makes fans more engaged. When you have $1,000 on the line, it makes you pay attention.
I'm addicted to being healthy. Are you telling me that addiction's a bad thing?
I mean, yes, addiction itself. We all have addictions, man. If you look at me, I'll tell you right now, I'm addicted to caffeine. I mean, I am trying desperately to get off of high milligram dose energy drinks of caffeine, but it's hard to do. And once you develop a habit, it's hard to buck a habit.
You got to get off that caffeine, dude. I've been addicted to caffeine before. That first 3 days, the headaches, a little bit of the shakes,
Oh yeah.
and then you're always craving it because you know that quick fix of energy is just right there for you. Ooh, just take a good sip. It's so delicious.
Stop it.
Serious question. With the need for math and all the statistics, do you think that Asian kids will suddenly become more popular?
I mean, aren't they already popular? I mean, the coolest kid in my high school was the Asian kid because, he was cool, so that already helped in the first place. But are you trying to say that other people can't do math?
I did not say that. I just wondered if now that Asian kids would suddenly be kind of cooler just because there's so much math and statistics involved in developing this need to gamble.
I have been out of school for so long that I just don't even know what the pulse is anymore. For all I know, the wokiest woke kid is the popular kid now. I mean, do you remember watching 21 Jump Street a few years ago and how confusing that was? You're just like, wait a second, the cool kid is the least likely kid to do anything athletic now. What?
Let's get back to strokes gained. And in terms of Dr. Mark Brody, they have this whole thing about they calculate 6 feet, 6 foot putt. Maybe you have a 50-50 shot. Let's say you have a 20-foot putt. You have an 18% chance. How is this system of simple bet going to factor in these putts? Because there's so much nuance in the putts. There's so many variables. I personally don't think that strokes gained actually measures much because every shot is so different than another shot. And you have to bear with me here a second. There's that whole point that Carl Jung makes about if I see a pile of rocks and I tell you, hey, the median weight of a rock in that pile of rocks is 4 ounces. Well, you're going to be hard pressed to find a rock that's 4 ounces. And the median tells you 0 about the actual rock you pull out. Just like, and consider this as well, if I tell you that the average human being has 1 testicle, doesn't tell you anything about men or women, actually. So this whole median principle, just like the percentage make of these putts, won't tell you anything about that actual putt. I think there's a lot of value in this gambling where I could kind of hack the system and make millions.
I think you're right if they do it with that glitch in mind, because obviously if you're at the course and you see, hey, this particular green has no break, or this particular green is level, and they're putting the same bet as if everything's a 20-footer, and they're going, well, we're treating it like all 20-footers, where it's a 25% make for a professional golfer, which that's usually what the PGA Tour will say on their broadcast, is like, it's make percentage from 20 feet, 18-20%, something like that. But you're right, because it doesn't actually take into account, is it 20 feet at Pebble Beach number 6, in a windy day, or is it 20 feet at your local TPC where there's no undulation whatsoever, and it just rained 2 days ago.
This is a huge way for us to make a ton of money for people, because if we're taking all the variables into account, we're going to give more accurate figures than, let's say, as you pointed out, a 20-footer in heavy windy conditions. If this app isn't taking the wind or these other factors into account, maybe even just the nature of the putting green, whether it's Bermuda grass or what have you, all these variables make a difference. There's definitely an opportunity for the savvy bettor who knows everything about golf to make a killing.
So you're saying a good agronomist could end up being just raking it in on the sideline. An agronomist, by the way, is a head greenskeeper person, somebody who basically studies the craft of landscaping for golf courses. And I'm telling you, those guys, if they really put their minds to this, they could make a killing. A good meteorologist, an actual good meteorologist, not the television ones, because those guys don't know a damn thing. Could this be a situation where all of a sudden, though, these gambling apps, if they're doing live betting like this, have to employ the top agronomists and top, meteorologists into their system to be able to help find the gaps to close down those windows of opportunity? It could be, though, that during the initial beta testing days of this system, you're right, there could be some loopholes available for those of us who are well informed about the golf courses and their conditions to make good money. But you got to think they're going to find ways to close those variables down very quickly. What do you think?
I mean, we're entering the wild, wild west. I don't believe in this strokes gained Dr. Mark Brody system. And if they're implementing something like that, where they're just taking these medians and averages, where, like, if, for example, with strokes gained, it only differentiates if you're in the fairway or in the rough. But we don't know the nature. Are you in the deep rough? Are you in a bad line in the fairway? And just by knowing the median over all these shots over the period of year, it doesn't help you at all with that exact shot at the moment, at that time. What is the player's intention? Are you trying to just hit it to 20 feet? I mean, I gave this example to some other guy I was debating on Twitter. I think he's known as the research guy. Let's say you have the 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass, and you're in the lead and you want to hit it 20 feet left. Instead, you block it a lot and you end up 3 feet to the right of the pin. Well, now you're close to the pin, so it looks like a good shot in terms of dispersion from the pin. But in terms of what you're trying to do, you realize you have to immediately go to the range afterwards and fix that big block you got going on.
Right. Well, not only that, one of the things that they don't take into account either is, yeah, you're in the fairway, but are you in the fairway and blind? versus being in the rough but you went for the green, so now you have a 30-foot chip, because there are holes like that. I don't like strokes gained metrics overall, but I really do like the TUGR's idea for how they do things, where it's head-to-head matchups, because now it's just comparing apples to apples, because that's the closest way to compare apples to apples, because it's comparing the guys that you played against versus the guys that you played against. So I like that better overall, but there are
Okay.
gaps in the system.
Now that you brought up this apples to apples situation, you would have to factor in very specific circumstances. For example, let's focus on putting. You're on Bermuda Green. The wind is blowing northeast 5 miles an hour. You have to put all these variables in to make sure that you're actually getting apples to apples if you actually wanted to be able to calculate the accurate percentages of these guys making these putts or missing these putts.
Well, and that's one of the things that makes all these things so much more tricky for betting to be made in the house's favor for golf. And that's one of the reasons why I think most high stakes or live odds betting situations have avoided golf, because there are so many variables at play that are uncontrollable. In football, in baseball, in soccer. Granted, soccer and baseball, the pitch and the diamonds will have different sizes as far as the outside walls, the height of the walls, or for soccer they can have a minimum and a maximum width and length. But with football, it's the exact same field everywhere you go. Now they may have a different atmosphere with the fans, or they may have a different turf, but it's the exact same field. So there are so many things that are not at play anymore. And especially with indoor stadiums, it's made gambling that much easier for the house to control, because there's less random variables at play. With golf, everything is a variable, because there is no two holes in the world that are alike. Even if they're made to be a carbon copy clone, they're not alike. And the same player who plays 4 hours later that same hole, it's a very different experience.
100%. I do think there's going to be a lot of potential value out there if you have a little bit of insider knowledge to make a killing on, especially on the putting. I don't know how many other, maybe it'll just be based on, do you think he birdies the next hole or eagles the next hole, things along those lines. But if it comes down to the minutia of 50-50 on this 6-foot putt, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to make a lot of money for a lot of people.
I think you're right. Obviously, the house is going to try to find a way to put the odds in their favor, and they have to, otherwise they can't exist. But I believe during the early days of this functionality, there will be plenty of opportunity for you to get one over on the house. Like I said, in the early days of testing on this thing.
Let's get back to a prior point, just in terms of TV viewership. Is this not the ideal way to track engagement throughout the round and figure out, even if you had a potential sponsor, hey, these are the peak times because this is when most of the bets are being placed?
That's a good point too, especially with LIV Golf, how they have on certain events, they will have a team-specific stream available. So like for Adelaide, they had a Ripper GC specific stream. For Tulsa, they had a Range Goat specific stream where it was only watching those guys. So this would also be helpful too when you have those kind of situations where it's, hey, if you want to be a sponsor of the Cam Smith stream, congratulations, these are the numbers that you're going to be looking at. And during 2.5 to 3 hours into the round, which is, holes 10 through 15, you're going to have peak viewership numbers available to you if you want to be a title sponsor of a commercial at that point in time. So yeah, there is benefit to that.
It really helps sponsors have more idea of who's watching and when, so that they're maximizing their dollars and their revenue. They're getting their eyeballs worth for the money they pay, because you can have more accurate metrics than this whole Nielsen rating or whatever they do nowadays that no one really knows who's watching what at this point.
These type of scenarios, betting in fantasy sports, they take a viewer from being a passive viewer to an active viewer. An active viewer is somebody who's got the leaderboards up while they're watching. They're fully engaged. They're dialed in. They're paying more attention than they do for their own 8-foot putts on the golf course.
What's also kind of focuses on this whole symbiotic relationship of everything working together is that, like we discussed before, maybe even if you aren't doing monetary bets, you're doing some type of other little gold coin or blue diamonds pop up, and you have a favorite team. Well, now you can turn it in for 30% off on a t-shirt and just keep that whole cycle of engagement and drawing people up into the product even more.
Exactly. So now you found a way to incentivize the distribution of your own merchandise, which is again helpful because once again, that is something that Live Golf has that anything else in golf never has had, which is merchandise availability. And as that becomes more popular and more mainstream, we're going to go from this fringe minority situation to a situation where I think the Aces brand will be on a recognition level of a lower level NFL team outside of their market. Outside of their market, obviously, if you go to Jacksonville, the Aces will never be at the Jacksonville Jaguars level in Jacksonville. Okay, but they might be at the level of the Jacksonville Jaguars in Ohio. You know what I'm saying?
Well, just getting back to the prior point I was making, if you have people being engaged and you can show this engagement to sponsors, the very act of getting people engaged has monetary value for the product.
Absolutely. There's a reason why YouTube's algorithms, TikTok's algorithms are all about audience retention. That's one of the things that Mr. Beast, who's the top YouTuber out there in the world. I don't know if I'm not endorsing his channel, but I'm saying that the guy is a genius when it comes to audience retention. If you watch one of his videos, it's designed to literally keep your attention for the entirety of the video, no matter how long it is. And he does a very good job. I bet you he has one of the highest percentages of audience retention out there, higher than probably any sports channel or anything in relation to probably anything. And he does a great job of that. And there's value behind that. Absolutely. There's a reason why ad space in his video is worth so much money, like in the actual video, not even an advertisement attached to the video. So you're absolutely right. When you have a more engaged audience, it becomes that much more valuable to invest your ad space both inside the product and outside the product as an advertisement.
Here's a crazy idea. Now that we're in this think tank trust tree, what if Live Golf gets some of these YouTube influencers like Mr. Beast to help them sprinkle some of that YouTube retention factor into the Live Golf podcast, where, I don't know, Mr. Beast goes out and hands some kid $10,000 and a new set of Callaway golf clubs.
I've never seen him actually get engaged with golf at all. It's one of the few things I've seen him do things with Dude Perfect. I haven't seen him do any. I've seen him do things with Joey Chestnut, and I've seen him do things with like Cam Newton, and there's several other sports athletes. I've never seen him actually get involved with a golfer of any kind of level, to my knowledge. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. So that would be interesting. I will say that I don't see him doing that simply because he's been very apolitical, and somehow this whole entire Live Golf world has turned political. I mean, we saw the Senate hearings just a few days ago. So because it's gone political, I don't think he'll make that move because I've never seen him do anything with a politician or anything with anyone in that realm that's actively in that realm. So I don't know about him, but I think you're on the right track. And I think the people that they need to be targeting right now are, I hate to say it, but good. Because they're the Mr. Beast of the golf world, essentially. They finally got Rick Shields to an event, but again, he was just there. And he was hyping it up, but he brought up a lot of the same concerns that we've always talked about, where there's a need for more teams to fill in viewership gaps. The range experience is amazing, yada yada. But you're right. I think if they found new ways to, even if they just sent Sue-Ann, Troy, and Dom to spend a week with like a Mr. Beast or a Rick Shields or a good to hang out with them, really learn about audience retention, that could be a factor and a helper. I don't know. What do you think?
I think anything you can do where you are leveraging off current systems that are working, like these YouTubers, and you can bring it over to Live, it's just going to make it a much more interactive product. The gambling is going to be fantastic once you have people engaged on the gambling level. Obviously, as we discussed, you can also do non-monetary aspects where they get discounts on Live merch, Live products. Likewise, the sponsors now, they benefit because they know, hey, this is the peak time people are viewing. And it's this whole little system of you're watching the product, thereby creating value for Live to sell.
Well, not only that, but like I said, LIV now has their own ecosystem for fantasy sports. So there's also ad space inside the fantasy app because the fantasy app's a part of LIV Golf Plus. So now you can sell ad space inside the fantasy portal, which if you don't think people aren't engaged in that screen, if they're actually getting involved in fantasy sports, they're engaged. So you're getting full audience retention while you're advertising in those spaces. So you're right.
How big is fantasy football, and how big could fantasy LIV Golf League become?
I think as long as they fought, because LIV Golf has the perfect model for fantasy sports to exist. It really does. You already have fantasy sports available based on the LIV Golf model itself. 4 players, 3 scores count. Lowest score at the end of the week wins. That's literally a fantasy sports model right there. And the fact is that you could make X number of teams in a league, like a 10-team draft, where you have a 10-team draft league, or you have a general pick'em league every single week. It's amazing. The opportunities are endless, and it's something that if the PGA Tour hadn't been so up their own butthole trying to fight LIV Golf, they could have invented this a year and a half ago for their own format without actually having to do the team aspect in their own space. They have a fantasy sports version, but it's not what it could be.
It's interesting because this just seems like the next progression of, the daily matchups you would have, but you still have to kind of follow it throughout the whole day to see, hey, did Scotty Scheffler beat Rory McIlroy head to head today? Or, you'd parlay a few things, but this is like down to the minute. I want to know about this putt. I got extra $10 on I could either buy some food or I can place this bet.
Well, and the best part about it is that with LIV Golf, all players are on the course at all times. So there are no stagnant bets until the golf is done for the day.
You're going to walk out of one of these LIV broadcasts sweating because that's a cardio workout. When you're placing bets the whole time, your mind is engaged. And I know a lot of people at home are going to be like, well, there's a lot of addictive behavior going on here. A lot of bad things can happen, but there's always a way to kind of channel it towards potentially education and other ways of growing the game. The first thing you need to do is get people interested and engaged.
And once you get people interested and engaged, they try to learn more. So all of a sudden, the person who is betting on the sport is trying to learn how to play the sport better, because when they know how to play the sport better, they can understand the odds better. And it becomes this cycle that feeds upon itself. And it goes from being a parasitic operation to being a self-sustaining ecosystem. That's how you make golf game grow.
On the dark side, on the negative side, there will be people who go down that rabbit hole and give into their addictions. But that's for another episode of Big Boy Pants Golf. Jake Span Golf, thanks for being on this episode, dude.
Absolutely. Always a blast, folks.
Folks, go over, check out Jake Span Golf, subscribe to his channel, and don't forget to subscribe to this one as well. Thank you very much. In a future video, I might get into antitrust laws, but I can tell you, I'm already antitrusting these two guys.